Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. This week we're going to be talking a little more about Fallout. If you're new around here, because of my deep dive into LGBTQ characters and themes within the Fallout franchise, welcome. Happy to have you here. This week is going to be something a little more news related, something that I'm very excited for. It's an update on the Fallout 3 Remaster. Fallout 3 is a game that holds a special place in a lot of Fallout fans' hearts. It was the first-person RPG within the Fallout series. Now, I didn't say the first 3D Fallout game, because technically that title belongs to Brotherhood of Steel, but, I like many others, kind of like to pretend that one doesn't exist. It was also Bethesda's first foray into the Fallout franchise. Fallout 3 has its own charm to it. I saw someone once compare it to a fan game, not as an insult, but more of how this team at Bethesda wanted to make a Fallout game set in the place that they lived. They imagined, what would the wasteland where I'm from look like? Which I think is a fair description. I think that's where so much of the love and attention comes from in Fallout 3. Fallout 3 released on October 28th, 2008. And it was met with fairly positive reviews overall. Now, of course, because it's a Bethesda title, it had a ton of glitches. And to this day, there are so many game-breaking bugs within Fallout 3, but there's a lot that are kind of charming and kind of fun. The other major criticism that Fallout 3 was dealt was being called Oblivion with guns. And this is one that honestly is a fair critique of the game. The game's gunplay is not the best. It uses the same engine as Oblivion, and it can show at certain points. But overall, Fallout 3 was a major success. A big enough success that it pretty much revived Fallout as a franchise and turned it into what it is today. Which is why I'm so excited for this remake, and it seems that I'm not the only one. Members of the Fallout 3 team are actually very excited for it too. I came across this interview and I just thought it was a really great sign for the Fallout 3 remake, and kind of encapsulates why I'm excited for it too. Nate Perkipile, which I think that's how you say his name, if you've seen my channel at all over the 2 years that I've done this now, you'll know that I'm terrible at names, and I am so sorry. Nate was an artist at Bethesda. He worked on Fallout 3, Fallout 4, and even Fallout 76 for a time. Since departing from Bethesda, he's become an independent developer. Most notably, he's worked on The Axis Unseen. He recently did an interview for The Examined Game. During this interview, they delved into his time at Bethesda, and it was very interesting. The news of the Fallout 3 remake came up during the interview, and what Nate had to say about the whole thing is just really great. I'm personally really looking forward to that, because we were like super tech constrained making Fallout 3, and you could only place so many lights. It's not exactly how we intended. I get why people are more upset over the movie remakes and stuff, but in the case of games, and particularly the art side of it, it's 100% not what we intended, and it was very constrained. He caps it off by saying, I think a lot of these remakes have been done, frankly, better lately too. Like the Resident Evil ones and stuff. Those were fantastic. Whereas for a while, I think a lot of those updates were like, oh, we made the textures a little bigger and we threw a sharpen filter in Photoshop. And it doesn't really look that much better, or actually as good as other games that are coming out. While Nate isn't working on this game, the fact that he is so excited and so open about how Fallout 3 was really a compromised vision overall is really refreshing to see. A lot of the time in the gaming world, I feel like there's so many NDAs, there's so many secrets and things like that, that when a developer comes out and talks about their previous work, there's always a kind of corporate response to it where it's like, yeah, well, we did the best we could, we this and that. But no, he just comes straight out and says, yeah, we were really constrained. And these tech constraints weren't limited to just Fallout 3. These same constraints applied to Fallout New Vegas. Most notably with Fallout New Vegas, it led to the cutting of the after the Battle of Hoover Dam section. You were meant to be able to roam around and continue playing the game after the second Battle of Hoover Dam. And the other thing that had to be cut, partially because of hardware constraints and also due to just how the memory and how the engine worked, was the ability to take companions into DLCs and have companions from DLCs return to the main game. One of the major things about Fallout 3 that was compromised during its development was something as simple as the draw distance. You can see in early concept art, the initial vision was something similar to what you see in Fallout 4, where you can stand on a peak or a mountain and see the city off in the background. You can see this mountain over here, this town over there. It was meant to feel far more vast. One of the major complaints I see about Fallout 3 is exactly how constrained it feels. Sometimes it doesn't feel like a cohesive wasteland. And something as simple as increasing the draw distance could really improve that. One of the other major constraints that hit Fallout 3 due to the technical limitations was the DC area itself. Veterans of Fallout 3, especially before the guides and all the tutorials came out, know how complicated it was to traverse through DC, through all those different subway tunnels and those little pocket sections throughout the city. Initially, it was meant to be far more open, but due to the limitations, it had to be quadranted off and separated by the subway system. With the remake, we could see it almost reopened. Now, of course, certain quest lines would have to be reworked in order to accommodate this. However, I think the term remake means a lot more than it used to. Kind of what Nate mentioned about how it used to be, an update where the graphics have been, bumped up a little bit and the textures are sharpened. Nowadays, a remake means a full, from the ground up, completely new game, essentially. We can continue to look at the concept art of Fallout 3 to get an idea of what we may see. One of them is a far more expanded Vault 101. This concept art of Vault 101 really reminds me of the Fallout TV show's versions of the vaults, and vaguely the early Interplay Fallout movie script where the vault was like a fake city and there were projectors and all these things. That's a story for another day. If you want to hear me talk about the canceled early Fallout movie back in the Interplay days, please comment below. But it reminds me of the Amazon Prime series version of the vaults, where it's far more open. There's windows overlooking the fields, like you see where the agriculture is and things like that. It kind of reminds me of BioShock a little bit, how you have these more open spaces and these windows looking out over the vault. One of the most simple but notable changes is just the ceilings being higher. If you've been in older buildings versus newer buildings, you'll notice that the height of the ceilings makes a huge difference in how open a place can feel. And as I mentioned earlier, with the possibility of new quest lines or quest lines being altered in order to fit this far more expanded version of Fallout 3, we see concept art for a New Year's party. This appears to be an earlier version of the diner that you see in Vault 101. And while I know that the intro for Fallout 3 is kind of made fun of for taking so long, for being kind of drawn out, especially if you're doing a repeat playthrough, I've always really enjoyed it because it really shows you what vault life is like to an extent. So seeing a birthday party, seeing different events, the classroom, things like that, I think is really interesting. And personally, I wouldn't mind the vault life being expanded. I think it could make choosing your traits and building your character a lot more interesting if there's different sections to it beyond just the GOAT test. Now, of course, with it being a remake, I would also like the option to skip that so I could just get to the main game. But I'm sure the age-old strategy of just saving as you exit the vault right before it asks you if you want to make any final changes will still work. I think the other major change that could apply to not only the vaults but the rest of the wasteland is helping to bridge the gap between stated lore and actual gameplay. It's one of the biggest things about Fallout that I think holds back the games in some sense, and I think sometimes fans have a difficult time grasping that because, well, the game is showing me one thing and the lore is telling me a completely different thing. An example of this being done for gameplay's sake would be the fusion cores in Fallout 4. The fusion cores do not last only like 10 or 15 minutes in the Fallout in-universe lore. They last a long time. But for the sake of gameplay, they altered the amount of time that they last, so it's more of a scarce resource that you have to think about. But the same thing happens in areas where it's not really supposed to, and a great example would be the population of certain settlements and the vaults within Fallout. I think the biggest example is Vault 101. In Vault 101, there are only 24 other NPCs. only 24 people that you can interact with. There's only one senior citizen, there's only a handful of kids. Like, the vault is very, very, very small. However, according to the lore of Fallout, vault sizes can range from 500 people to 1,000 people, which is a very big difference. Now, of course, it's stated that Vault 101's population is kind of dwindling at this point. The experiment within that vault is that it never opens. Other vaults would have their reclamation day, but Vault 101 never did, leading to more and more inbreeding and things like that, the gene pool becoming less and less diverse over time. And so I think the increased performance could really, really help, bumping up the population of certain factions, certain battles even, including more soldiers, more characters. It could make things like the Liberty Prime March way more entertaining because it'll feel like an actual battle instead of, shooting 2 or 3 guys and then watching a scripted event. The other major thing is vehicles being changed and added. Some concept art from Fallout 3 shows us that at one point in time they were considering showing these maintenance vehicles that people would sort of ride in, and it would vacuum up the tunnels within the vault. And of course there's concept art of certain cars and things like that. Now, I personally don't know if they were planning on having a drivable car in Fallout 3. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility, as Fallout 2 has a car that you can drive. But simply the change and addition of NPCs using vehicles and things like that to make this world feel more fleshed out, it is pretty interesting. Finally, there's things like the inclusion of various vaults that were cut from the game. Most notably, you actually have mentions of Vault 76, which it might not make an appearance, but certain mentions and things like that are always fun. There's others that were cut that might be re-added. Possibly even the ones from the limited comic series that came out, like you have Vault 69 and 68, where it's one man and 999 women, and then you have the opposite, and then there's also the one where it's like a bunch of people and a tiger. You could see those added, maybe. And then also the introduction and also reworking of certain skills, such as the reintroduction of the throwing skill, and also just an overhaul to the gunplay. Fallout 4 was really praised for its gunplay, and it's a combat system that I really, really enjoy. So if that were to be basically copy and pasted over to this remake, I can't say I would be upset about it. Now, of course, there are questions like how far is too far for these remakes? Are they going to add the Fallout 4 system of power armor to this game, or will it operate like it did in the original Fallout 3? These are all questions that we won't have answers to for a long time, but one thing I can tell you is that there is tons and tons of cut content for Fallout 3. So much that I could probably make multiple videos on it, and I think I would really have fun doing that. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me cover Fallout 3's cut content. So that's it for this upload. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you have a good morning, or evening, or, whatever.